So maybe we'll go ahead and start as people are getting comfortable. I'll introduce myself. I'm Julia Gingrich. I'm the Director of Philanthropy and Engagement here at United Way, and I'm so happy to welcome you to our 4th United Voices event. We're really happy you could join us to hear from this wonderful panel on how to build social impact into your career. So we'd like to begin with a territorial acknowledgement. We take time to do a territorial acknowledgement because it's a way of honoring the land on which our successes have been built and the Indigenous people who have been living on and caring for this land for thousands of years. Today, we offer it as an act toward reconciliation between non-Indigenous Canadians and Indigenous peoples in Canada. Today, we also continue to mourn the many children who died at residential schools across Canada, the ongoing trauma of the residential school system. We'll continue to work alongside our partners in supporting change, and we commit to listening, learning, and unlearning. We also commit to looking deeply at and altering our own practices that harm, reinforce systemic racism, and contribute to the ongoing legacy of colonialism. So we acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. And we acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. So to prepare us for the rest of our time together, please note that if you have a question for the panel, they would love to answer, and you can send that to us by using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You'll see it right in the middle, the bottom of your screen marked Q&A. So as I said, we're so happy that you're here so we can all think more deeply about building social impact into our careers along with our wonderful panel. We at United Way, we really developed this series, United Voices, so that we could do exactly that. Provide a forum for people to come together and share their thoughts and concerns and passions. And hopefully we all walk away just a little more informed, feeling a little bit better, just really feeling heard. And United Voices is really a vehicle to connect United Way to our community at large and engage with you through community leaders and movers and shakers and change agents. So let's get into our session today. I have the honor of introducing our panel host, Rebecca Tascona. Tell you a little bit about Rebecca. As the head of platform strategy and operations at BMO, Rebecca is responsible for integrating and sustaining effective business operations across all business to consumer portfolios. As a strategic enabler, she's accountable for multi-year planning, prioritization, and execution of transformation agendas, in addition to leading business management activities, communications, supplier relationship management, risk management, and governance activities. She and her husband are also proud parents of 2 young sons. And I also want to let you know that Rebecca is also the chair of our campaign cabinet here at United Way. So really helping us to encourage philanthropy across the region. So we're so grateful to have you here with us today, Rebecca, and I'll pass it over to you to introduce us to our amazing panelists and lead us through this conversation about building social impact into our careers.
Okay, thanks so much, Julia. And welcome to everyone. We're really excited to have you here as part of this conversation. And to kick us off, to start us off, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panelists today. So our first panelist is Rob. Rob Connell is a partner at KPMG, where he helps lead the tax incentives practice, which helps clients to access funding for activities like innovation, training, and accessing new markets. He's been at KPMG for over 16 years, and he's earned a reputation for delivering client service excellence. He's also very committed to our community. He is a graduate of the Leadership Waterloo Region Class of 2020, has volunteered with the Charitable Research Reserve, House of Friendship, and has helped lead workplace campaigns and was part of the individual giving cabinet with the United Way. Welcome, Rob. Really excited to introduce Jessica. Jessica Manarang is a 3rd-year arts and business student at the University of Waterloo, majoring in legal studies and minoring in peace and conflict studies. While she has always valued and pursued a spirit of volunteerism and giving, she only recently discovered philanthropy as a passion and a career option through her co-op work terms while in university. She's had many work terms with philanthropy experience. She supported the fundraising efforts for the University of Waterloo as a development assistant with the Office of Advancement. She expanded her work with the Waterloo Region, United Way Waterloo Region Communities as a philanthropy coordinator, so with this group. And she's now in her 4th co-op term, helping facilitate the University of Waterloo's United Way campaign as a campaign coordinator, a very important role for our campaign. Jessica really looks forward to expanding at her career in philanthropy once she graduates, which will be soon. Welcome, Jessica. And also really pleased to introduce Laura Galbraith, who is the Director of Community Impact at Vidyard. She's responsible for building and implementing Vidyard's social impact programming, and wait till you hear all about it. They're very busy. As part of her role, Laura works to introduce giving back through volunteering as a way of business and life at Vidyard. She was born and raised in Waterloo and has spent her career working in tech in a variety of capacities and roles. She volunteers her time with many local organizations and is one of the founding organizers behind Plugin, which is a local nonprofit organization that helps connect the community to charitable organizations to help increase awareness and local volunteerism. She is also on the Women in Communication and Technology Waterloo Region Board of Directors, an alumni chapter executive committee member for University of Waterloo, and a mentor with the University of Western Ontario's Women in Technology Society. In her spare time, which I'm not sure how she has any after reading all that, Laura enjoys spending time with her 8-year-old daughter, Binny, exploring, mountain biking, rock climbing, or doing science experiments together. So welcome, Laura. We're so excited to have all of you here today for this conversation. We're going to start with a poll of our audience, actually, the folks that are on the call today. We'd love to understand, how many months do you dedicate to philanthropy? How many hours a month, I should say, do you dedicate to philanthropy yourself, to giving back through donations or volunteering? And you can see that there's a poll that's now popped up on your screen. Take a moment to answer. And I should say, as we're doing this, I'm actually not sure how to see the results of this poll. Britt, will you let me know? Or maybe it's in the chat. I'm going to open up the chat. Oh, wait, now, oh, Britt showed us. Okay, there you go. So on this call, wow, we have some folks that give more than 10 hours. I suspect they may be with the United Way because they certainly spend a ton of their time. And then we have others. I would say the majority is between 0 to 5 hours. Well, that is just wonderful. The fact that folks are actually giving back any of their valuable time to the community is just amazing. And we're here to inspire you to figure out how do you work it into your life even more, your career, your personal life. And so let's start the conversation. The first question, and by the way, feel free to ask questions in the chat. We will open up the chat room to questions, so feel free as you go along. But the first question I'd like to ask, and maybe I'll start with you, Laura, if you don't mind. The origin of the word philanthropy means the love of humanity, which likely rings true for all of us. What does philanthropy mean to you, Laura, and why is giving back through time or resources so important to you?
Thanks, Rebecca, and I'm really excited to be here and talk about this. So philanthropy for me growing up, I grew up in a family that it was just kind of like our way of life, and that we were able to, a responsibility that we had to give back to our community. And so for me, through the various stages of like growing up and then in my career, for me, it was about giving what we had in terms of our resources and our time and our energy and our skills to support our community, and throughout my whole life, that's looked very different. And it's all about really inspiring and using the things that really our gifts and our time to really support our community in a very valuable way.
Thanks, Laura. And I think you raised a really interesting point, because a lot of people think philanthropy means money. It doesn't just mean that, it means time. Your time is a valuable asset as well. Hey, Rob, over to you. What does philanthropy mean to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I think I would need to, the money side notwithstanding, I think I'd need to add a couple extra zeros to the back of what I donate before I could consider myself a philanthropist. And frankly, I was a little bit uncomfortable with the term at first, simply because you think of a Michael G. DeGroot, or you think of people who have done so much for the community. But I would like to see us change that a little bit and to think of what everybody can do, the people on this call and the people in our community can do to make it better. And giving back is important to me because we do not live in a fair society. I think that just about everybody on this call is extremely lucky that we live where and when we do. And I recognize that my success is based on both hard work and luck, and that the society which has been so good to me doesn't work for everybody. So Joan heard me say this when we did the KPMG United Way call a month ago, but I think it bears repeating. And that is, I think that a lot of people in this community who are in a position to give, they don't understand the depth of the need. And that's not meant to shame anybody, but there's a lot of people who live in nice neighborhoods and then they get in their car and go to work and they go to nice shops and restaurants and they don't see what's happening around them simply because they're not exposed to it, right? There's a mental health crisis going on here right now. There's a drug crisis at the opioids here right now. There's an affordable housing issue that's affecting huge parts of the population, and it's going to start including seniors. It's already hitting young professionals. And right now, a lot of the people who are in a position to give are saying, hey, look how much my house went up. This is great. And so to me, I think a society should be judged on how it, not how it exalts and treats the people at the top, but how it looks after the people at the bottom. And I think it's up to the people who get the most out of that society. They're the ones who should be looking after it. So to me, that's why philanthropy is important to me.
I think that's a wonderful answer. Thank you for sharing your perspectives and your challenge, I think, quite frankly, your challenge to your fellow citizens. So thank you for that, Rob.
Yeah.
Jessica, I can't believe you have time to give back when you're studying as well. I certainly didn't figure out that equation when I was at university, but over to you. What does philanthropy mean to you? And I'm so inspired that you're getting started at such a young age.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's very kind. I'll say philanthropy as a term is still new to me. I've only recently discovered it as a passion, as a career, but personally, I was pursuing philanthropy before I fully recognized it as the term philanthropy through just volunteerism, the spirit of giving back, as well as just basic empathy and compassion. And I think all of those things, as Laura mentioned in what she said, are privileges as well as responsibilities that we have. And I think they're beautiful opportunities to recognize, contribute to, but also understand the humanity around us, within our community, as well as within ourselves. And I think that's so important because whether we realize it or not, or we like it or not, our actions impact those around us. And how we live and the decisions we make ultimately affect those around us, and vice versa. The decisions made by other people affect us in ways that we'll never know or understand. So to me, philanthropy is an opportunity to take that inevitable impact on others people's lives and make it intentional and positive.
Thanks, Jessica. The next question we have, by the way, I love your response about impacting others. It's like a bit of the butterfly effect. If we do one kind thing, think of how the wings impact others, the air. How has your philanthropic experience affected you professionally and personally? And how has it changed through different stages of your life? And whether you use the word philanthropic experience or giving back to the community, whatever term you're more comfortable with, can you describe a little bit about how it's affected you professionally and personally? So maybe I'll start with Rob, if you don't mind this time.
Sure. Well, maybe that's a lot there. So maybe I'll start with how it's changed. And really, when it comes to giving, there are two levers we can pull. You can donate time, or you can donate money. And like a lot of people early in my career, I had a lot of time and not a lot of money. And I think for most people, as you progress through your career, you have more money but less time, or you can have young kids and have no time and no money. But for most people, it's early in the career, you've got more time to give. And certainly that's been my path. One story that I'd like to share is one of my favorite things on that is I taught a class at McMaster and donated the money back to the school. And it was a ton of work. It was probably about 250 hours, but it was fantastic. I was able to donate, I think, about $7,000 at a time that I could only afford to give $1,000 a year. And so this was just such a major donation. I was really proud of myself. And the next year, some poor student from master calls up and says, "Hey, I saw you gave 7,000 next year. Would you consider giving 10 this year?" And I had to explain that sorry, my budget's 1,000 and it's spent elsewhere. That's I'm sorry, it's not here. I have time. I don't have money. And today that's different. Is I do have a little bit more money to give, and the challenge is finding the time. And certainly to me, that's where it's important. Laura, I look what you guys do at Vidyard. KPMG is the same way. Is finding ways to give people that time to donate, which can be so hard to find elsewhere.
I think that is, as leaders, a really important thing to do. I'm really lucky. I work at an organization that, BMO, it's ingrained in us, employee giving, and year round, finding time to give back, volunteer days. And if you work at an organization where that doesn't exist, lead from the front and ask to start a program like that, because it just takes a few leaders to change, how an organization starts to think about giving back to their community, right? Laura, I'd love to hear, Vidyard, and through your leadership, so much giving back to the community. How has your experience changed, both personally as a mother? I'm sure you do a lot with your daughter, but also, at work as well, professionally.
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate to work in a role where I get to do this every day. And it's such an impact on my personal life to see employees find something that they're so excited about in terms of giving back of their time and their resources. So at Vidyard, we give our employees 2 volunteer days that they can use however they want during the year, whether that's broken up into small bits of time, weekly, or a full day worth, however they want to use it. But knowing that it's really important that we kind of take a leadership role in that, and enabling them to feel that they are empowered to do it. We also do this Vidyard Give Back series of time where we, allocate different teams to work on projects in our community during work hours, and the whole company's doing that. And I find from a lot of employees, it kind of removes that level of guilt that they would feel from taking maybe those personal volunteer days to be able to give back to their community in a very meaningful way. And this year we're doing that using their skills. So it's wonderful to see the excitement that they see that their skills can really translate and help impact organizations in our community. From a personal front, it was really important for me from an early age that my daughter was exposed to so much, because I think, empathy and kindness are 2 things that are so important, that are ingrained in her at such an early age. And so I've always brought her alongside with me to do different activities in the community, giving back. And it's great to see now, even at the age of 8, how she starts to think about her community. So she heard about House of Friendship in the shelter, having to temporarily close. And she said, "Mom, I'm good at making cards. I'm going to make cards and sell those cards and raise money for the House of Friendship." And it's so exciting. So she's raised over $500. And I can't even tell you the pride that she has in making these times, like doing the outside of the card, the inside of the card, making the envelope and giving those to people. And it's really great to see that she has such confidence in her skills at such a young age to be able to find something that she's great and she's passionate about, and then give back to her community in that way. And I think, I'm inspired by her in doing that, because I think sometimes we think, okay, my contribution can't matter that much. But I think sometimes when we're like, every little bit counts, and whether your contribution is large or small, a lot of money or a little bit of money, it all matters. And I think we all have a role to play in that. So just, encouraged. And over the years, I've seen how, sometimes it shifts between giving of my time with different groups that I'm really passionate about. Obviously, I'm really passionate about girls in STEM. That's something that resonates really deeply with me. And so I don't have a lot of time, but I find that I want to carve out that time because I care so deeply about it. And it's all about finding that thing that really inspires you and a cause that really resonates with you.
I want to just pick up on that point before I go to Jessica. Find something that is near and dear to you, that is passionate, and it won't, it will just come naturally how you give back. A really small example during COVID, well, we're still in COVID, but I read an article about how more and more women were having to, leave abusive households, things like that. And can you imagine doing that through a pandemic? And, our community had never seen record numbers like this. So I'm a sucker for anything involving kids. I have to tell you, like, I want all kids to thrive and have a fair shot, and mothers. And so I rallied some of my colleagues and said, look, the women's shelters, they're experiencing record high numbers. What if we did a diaper drive? And over the next 2 weeks, let's see how many diaper boxes we can collect. And everyone just dropped them off in my driveway, and I would store them. And the number of diapers we were able to collect from a bunch of colleagues was amazing, like stacks. And I got my kids to help sort, and we dropped them off. And it was just a simple way to, you read an article, but turn that insight into action for your community. And it's very powerful to do that, right? And so I love how you said that, because if you have a passion and you see there's a need with that passion, the ideas will just flow. Jessica, over to you now. You're not yet starting your profession. Well, you're doing work co-ops, but you haven't graduated. I'd love to know, maybe just a different spin. How has your experience with philanthropy inspired maybe some of your fellow students? Are they learning from your experience, and are you sparking something in them about how to give back?
Yeah, interesting question. I think that's actually my favorite part about working in philanthropy, is the ability to work and inspire different volunteers, especially with the position that I'm in now as campaign coordinator for my university's United Way campaign. I get to work with almost exclusively volunteers, people who volunteer their time to make this campaign a reality. So I think that's been really inspiring for me to be able to see their work and how my work in philanthropy enables them to contribute their time as volunteers to philanthropy. And then through that, their work then inspires other people to contribute in different ways, which then also feeds into my inspiration for it as well. So really, it just becomes this beautiful cycle that just continues to expand of social good and compassion. So yeah, I think that's definitely also been my favorite part about it.
Thanks. Our next question is a bit more focused on philanthropy and supporting growth in your own career. Now, obviously, Laura, this is your career. You have a very important role at Vidyard, making sure that the organization is giving back. So I'd love to hear, have you always had a role like this in your career, or was this something that you evolved into because you had a passion for giving back? Can you explain that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I didn't always have a very formed role doing this. So when I started at Vidyard, I was employee 30. So it was very small. And at the time I was supporting our CEO, Michael Litt. And it kind of became something that we wanted to do more of. So off, the side of my desk, we were kind of coordinating more of grassroots efforts, getting our volunteer up and running and starting Plugin. Which actually BMO was one of our first series sponsors for, so I was thankful for that. Yeah, supporting our community. And it was a way, because at the time we didn't have the ability to simply write a check as an organization to support, but we didn't want that to stop us. We really wanted it to find creative avenues that we could support our community. And volunteering is obviously the easiest, least expensive thing that you can do. But we found that through volunteering that it became kind of contagious. People were like, yeah, let's go serve dinner together at the men's shelter. Let's do this. Let's get together. And the more that people found out about organizations, the more they were inspired to actually want to give back. And our program started to grow, our employee base started to grow. And we started to see that people were coming to Vidyard to work because of what we were doing in the community, because we genuinely cared. And it was really part of our DNA. And over the years, we've really expanded what we do. So now we do charitable donation matching, which allows our employees to donate up to $1,500 a year. And we match that completely. And so, and their volunteer days and finding creative ways that they can give back to our community. So it's been really great to kind of see it evolve. And I've been at Vidyard now 7 years, which sounds crazy to say, but it's really evolved. And then my role, a few years ago, just kind of broke off because it became so big. And our two co-founders cared so deeply about the community that they really, wanted to advocate for this role. And we've been able to grow it. So, again, thankful I'm working at a company that values that piece, because it's not always tied to revenue. And that's sometimes hard to justify, but it's definitely rewarding. And so for somebody that maybe is in a similar situation where there's not a role, you know, you can start something. You can start grassroots. You can get people involved, find a cause that's meaningful to you, and start giving back, and see where that takes off.
Thanks, Laura. And that's amazing how it's evolved, surely because of the impact that you had. And the days of caring, I just want to, you know, put a plug in, you know, as things start to open up again. One of the most profound things through my career, very early on in the company I'm at, was the ability to be part of the days of caring with United Way. And I had never, you know, visited a homeless shelter before. I had never been to a food bank where they were stacking boxes for families to come pick up the food that they needed for that week. And it was a very humbling experience. And to Rob's point before, it really opened my eyes to such a profound need. And this was in Toronto, but really that needs in any community that we live in across Canada. We're very fortunate to live in Canada, but not everyone has the same level of fortune. So Rob, over to you. You're obviously, you know, an accountant by day, but a leader in philanthropy at your firm as well. So how has that, you know, evolved? How has that supported your career growth?
Well, yeah, actually, before getting into that, I want to pick up on what Laura was saying in terms of how it can help a business, because it doesn't tie to the bottom line. But what it does is it helps give your employees a better experience. And if we look at where we are right now in the midst of the Great Resignation, if we are not finding a way to go above and beyond for our people, we're not going to be keeping our people, and we're not going to have a strong team. And certainly from what I've seen is giving back to the community. I can't say at the level of Vidyard. I mean, I'm amazed at what you guys are doing, but I think we do a phenomenal job, and it's been core to us for, I think we changed probably 12 or 13 years ago. And because people have not been able to get out and volunteer because of COVID for the past year and a half, I got my first crew out about a month ago, and we went and planted a moon garden at Rare. And so I reached out and I said, hey, it's going to be late October. It's going to be miserable. Who wants to come plant a moon garden? And we had a dozen people volunteer, and they all said the same thing. Yes, sign me up. And two, what is a moon garden? I don't even care what this is. I want to get in there. And by the way, as now that we found out, a moon garden attracts nocturnal pollinators to help provide a place so they don't get all wiped out as we urbanize everything. Anyway, neither here nor there. So I think it is important for businesses to really be giving people a chance to give back because they crave it and they need it. In terms of my own career, I think there's no doubt that there are a lot of benefits. Doing this, it gives exposure to both the higher ups inside your organization as well as to people within the broader community. It's given me a chance to develop and demonstrate skills like public speaking, organizing initiatives, fundraising. And there's absolutely no doubt that it opened doors and it creates paths to more business down the road. But I want to caution. I would say that career growth is a side effect of getting into philanthropy. I think anybody who goes into it with that as a motive, what you're doing is going to ring hollow and inauthentic, and it's going to be ineffective. And so I think a theme we're going to hear from everybody here is absolutely find something that speaks to you and you're passionate about, and that's how to get the most out of it.
I think that's absolutely true. And as you get more senior in your career, the obligation to figure out how do you spark that interest in those that are coming behind you so that, you know, it continues is actually really exciting. It's something that's really motivating as well. They have way better ideas than I do, so I love it. Jessica, you know, I know that, again, that you're starting out, but, you know, tell us a little bit about what you're hoping to get from your path when you graduate from will you go into philanthropy as a full-time career? Is that what you're motivated to do?
Yes, certainly. Although I'm still very much in the beginning stages of what is going to be my career, I would say that philanthropy, as opposed to just contributing to the growth, it's really driven and shaped what that growth is for me. And just to add on to what Laura and Rob had mentioned in terms of how it impacts business, I think I'm also a student of arts and business, so I have some insight into that. And what I've seen in terms of trends is how much more prominent philanthropy, its values, and its principles are becoming in the business world as well as every aspect of our lives. the pandemic has really shown us, for instance, how important it is to celebrate local businesses, local charities. And so now people are recognizing the importance of investing in our local communities. And that's, a side effect as well from the attention that we're giving to different social issues, whether that's reparations for certain culture groups, ethnicities, as well as answering and attesting to different environmental causes. I think people as consumers in terms of general business are now expecting this social responsibility and wanting and demanding that informed empathy, just the way that philanthropy already caters to with its donors, with its community partners, through stewardship, as well as just meaningful engagement and accountability. So I think whatever career and whatever way you're approaching your career, understanding the principles and values of what philanthropy is and how it contributes to society as a whole is really important and will ultimately help you grow in whatever that career is going to be.
Thanks, Jessica. And we wish you all the best as you go through that next phase. It's an exciting time when you're graduating. By the way, Laura, you mentioned cards. We were all very inspired by your daughter's innovation and just getting out there. I noticed the other day the Waterloo Public Library, they're asking for any cards that any kids can make for seniors that are lonely. So if you can drop off some cards, if you have kids that have any artistic ability or yourself, they're looking for handmade cards for the holiday season. So just, any organization can find ways to give back. And I thought that was such a creative idea. They have lots of locations. Okay, so the next one, some of us have been around a little bit longer in our careers. And so the question may not be pertaining to everyone, but the question really is around what changes have you seen, how have you seen philanthropy change over time? And also, can you give a great example of how your philanthropy or giving back has had an impact in the community? Laura, well, let's start with you.
That's a tough one where to dive in with that. I would say how I've seen it change. Again, I think traditionally we do think about philanthropy as, a donation of dollars. And that was kind of the coined term when it came to giving back. And I think we're starting to see from a personal level, but also businesses be more creative with that. So product donations are great. So if you have a really great innovative product that can help organizations succeed and giving them the training required, that's a great way to give back. If you have a great space, maybe you have a great office space that you want to, donating that for use. One year, I think we held over 100 events in our office, and it's a great use of space too. Again, when you're limited dollar-wise, you're like, how else can we help? And I think sometimes that's when the most creative ideas come out, like, oh, well, we have space. We've got time, let's do this. And then I think we're starting to see too, more and more ways people are getting creative with their own skills. And they're seeing that their skills that they are successful in their job can also be really easily applied to organizations and support that. Where I started, so again, when I was younger, my parents kind of exposed us to so much and giving back. And my parents are probably two of like the kindest hearted people that you'll ever meet. And I have 3 siblings. And so my parents, brought us to serve meals. We helped at nursing homes and did so much there. And when I went to university, I became really passionate about literacy, and I started to take Strong Start and started part in that program. And it kind of built off that. And I saw that, in university, I didn't really have a lot of time, but it was important. And, at the stage now where, I am in the position where I can donate financially, being able to support causes in our region that are important and inspiring other people to do that. The other thing too, where I encourage people to do that, is use your voice, advocate for things that are important. If you're in a position and you have a spot at a table with an avid audience that is willing to listen, use that. Advocate for housing, advocate for shelter care, for food security. Those are really important things. And we all have a voice, so let's use it. So that's really important to me.
Thanks, Laura. Rob, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think there's two parts to this. So in terms of what changes have there been because of my philanthropy, well, like the changes that you can see are the ones that come from donating time, not money. And so the community is going to be a little more vibrant with things. We've helped paint some of the House of Friendship shelters. We've repaired fences, built flower boxes. There's now a rain and moon garden at the North House at Rare from what the team has done with our hands. But the money that's donated, I would say that there are dozens, if not hundreds, of lives in the community that are measurably better because of the money I've donated to United Way over the past 10 years. And just because I can't see it or point to this person got this treatment or here's what United Way was able to do with the money, doesn't mean that that impact isn't real. And so I think that there is a lot that we are doing. At KPMG, one of our strategic partners is Kidsability that we support. And when I hear colleagues who are having their kids get support through that, it makes me feel good to say, hey, I know that some of what we're doing is making an impact on the people all around us. In terms of changes, I think the biggest change that I've seen to philanthropy, and it's on the volunteering side, obviously right now is due to COVID, is the opportunities to volunteer are way down. It's a bit of a crisis for a lot of organizations because the biggest source of the best volunteers being retirees are the ones highest hit by COVID and are the ones who are staying away. So that's a huge challenge that we're going to need to figure out as a society. And maybe talking about change and using a voice, I'm going to talk about a change I would like to see. And I would like to see if there's a way that we can remove the stigma around people talking about their charitable giving. And I think there's really two main reasons that people don't do it, one good one and one not so good. And the good one is that people are inherently modest and they don't want to feel like people get the impression that they're only giving so they can put their hand up and say, I gave $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000. Look at me, look at this humble brag of how much I can afford to give away. And then they're worried that there's going to be people who look at that and look down at them for essentially broadcasting what they've done. And I think that's a good reason. I think the worst reason is people come the other direction and say, well, I just gave 2,000, but that person just gave 100,000. Right? We've got Michael G. DeGroot gave $100 million to the hospital at McMaster University. Well, what I'm doing is nothing, and it's not even worth saying. I would love to see us get rid of that stigma, because there's a knock-on effect. When people see other people giving, when you know what your friends are doing and you want to help support their causes, it can and will help us do more, and we need to do more.
Thank you, Rob. That reminds me of a colleague I work with who was unfortunately impacted by cancer and decided when she was really helped by the hospital that she was going to raise money for that hospital. And how did she do it? She sold pumpkins. Her dad's a farmer. They've sold almost $100,000 worth of pumpkins so far over 4 years to give back to that hospital. It can come from anywhere. The spark can come from anywhere, but it takes a leader. And there's the thing I think that's amazing about that story is she wasn't a natural philanthropy leader. She didn't have experience raising significant amounts of money. She just knew she wanted to give back and found a way that she could. And I'm so inspired by her, and it continues.
And it's perfect because what we don't need is one more person who's lucky enough to be able to give $1 million. We need 2,000 people who can give $500 to make the same impact.
Yeah. Jessica, I'll go to you quickly, and then we should probably open up the question line because we do have some time for questions. Jessica, you've been involved with a few different philanthropy organizations through your co-ops. Any insights that you'd like to share about things that impressed you, or how you saw things change even through that experience?
I think a lot of it has already been touched on by Laura and Rob, but I'll just add that truly there's no contribution that's too small. And adding on to what Rob was saying in terms of reducing the stigma around talking about philanthropy and how we're able to give, I think there's also a lot of worry about matching amounts or not giving enough, or just the amount of what you give or how you give. And I think it's so important to understand that the important part is that you're able to give, and there's always opportunity to grow that giving. In my personal case, especially as a teen when I was just starting to get into volunteerism and giving back. That started out just completely as volunteerism. And I gave what time that I could to certain causes that spoke to my heart. And it's only very recently, because I'm working through my positions, that I'm able to contribute a little bit more through monetary donations now, as well as volunteering. So there's always opportunity to develop and grow that, but truly whatever you're able and affording to give in terms of time or monetary donations is so valuable and so needed.
Rebecca, you're on mute.
I said thank you, Jessica. And of course, what would a virtual call be without someone being on mute for a minute? We do have time for questions, and so there's two ways I think you can ask a question. One is there's the chat line. There's also the Q&A function. If you do have a question, I will ask this one question because I think it's a great. It's a great question, and maybe Julia, you wouldn't mind if you can expand on it a bit if you're able to come on camera. I'm not sure if you are, but one of our participants mentioned the fact that there's a lot of high school students that need volunteer hours, which is absolutely true. What a wonderful requirement of graduation, quite frankly, that didn't exist when I was in high school. And so how do the younger students in our community find ways to give back? Are there opportunities for year-round giving, Julia, or are there other ways, virtual ways that students are able to give back right now? Are you able to come on the camera, Julia? Oh yeah, they are.
Yeah. Thanks, Rebecca. I'll just pop in to just quickly say this, that absolutely there's a lot of ways to give back, and it's such a great question. And that key piece of giving back from a young age is an amazing piece that you've all been talking about, and how it builds in us that willingness to give back. And so United Way has some opportunities. A lot of things are virtual right now because of the time that we're in. And so we'll send out some resources. We call them day of caring opportunities. You can also find them on our website. Another wonderful place is a partner of ours, the Volunteer Action Center. And their website is volunteerwr.ca. I'll put it into the chat. And so that's a wonderful place. They have opportunities from across the region with different organizations. And that is a key starting place for giving back and getting those volunteer hours. And they have specific activities for youth.
Okay, thanks, Julia. And those students, they really do need those hours. So it's great to get them exposed to different community organizations. Sorry, Rob, were you going to chime in there too?
No, that's I couldn't add anything better than that.
Okay, great. We do have a question, and feel free to keep the questions coming. This is a question from someone that says, you've all spoken about finding the causes that speak to you. Any tips on how to find out what that is? And where are some good places to start? Maybe I'll just start with, it starts with storytelling. For me, honestly, when you hear some of the stories of people who have been helped by a United Way agency or any not-for-profit organization, you can't help but be moved by how they've been helped or the need that existed that you didn't. So for me, it started from a real story, and that would be something that inspired me. And then for me, my giving did change as I became a parent. It was very, it tugged at my heartstrings. My kids basically won the parent lottery. I won the parent lottery. But I know not every kid out there has the same opportunity. So to me, that's how I think becoming a parent really inspired me to find that cause. But I'll open it up to our panel. Rob, can we start with you?
Yeah, no, a few thoughts on that. Certainly, I'll echo what Julia said about the Volunteer Action Center. Is a fantastic organization. Is a great way to start. United Way. Peter Meyer helped lead some of these. I forget what they're called. Walkabouts. There's a proper term where we went through the working center, saw some of the different areas and some of the different organizations that United Way supports, and that's a great way to see what the need is and see if something will resonate. Or another one that people may not be aware of is Leadership Waterloo Region. And that's really sort of leadership skills with the idea of community giving and looking towards how do you identify something to be passionate about. So I would recommend that any of those are great places to start.
Laura, Vidyard gives back to so many different things. How do you guys, or even personally, how did you decide on where things that were of immense interest to you?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is just trial and error, right? Like there might be something that you hear about, somebody puts up a request for something, try it. Like if you're trying to navigate like different areas that are interest, there's a lot of opportunities that are like a one-time opportunity to give back, and try it out and see if it's something that you're really passionate about. I became really passionate about girls in STEM. I cared a lot about that before I had a daughter, but now I care even more about that now that I have a daughter. And so it was something that was a personal tug at my heart, and wanting to make an impact. So that kind of evolved, but I also, care a lot about supporting a lot of our essential supports in our community. Working in downtown Kitchener, walking past people that are on the street, seeing the needs that exist. There's some days walking to work that you're just like moved to tears and seeing that, and it kind of moves you to want to make an impact. And then you look for organizations that are supporting them, that you can make a small contribution, whether a time or a donation, and finding the needs that way.
Jessica, your thoughts? How do you find the causes?
For sure. I guess I'll give my perspective as strictly as a student, going into the world of social good, volunteerism, and philanthropy. For me personally, I'm very introverted and very shy. So especially as a young teen, getting into different movements was very intimidating for me. I started out strictly volunteering with the different clubs in my school, actually. And I was very fortunate to go to a high school that was so focused on social justice and fundraising. And so that was a big influence for me to start there and then slowly expand my way out to the local community. And once I did that, I would say also United Way was a huge helping hand in my ability to do that, especially if you're starting out and not really understanding, or it can be overwhelming to understand the most pressing needs in our community. United Way is already equipped and has done that research about what those social issues are within our local community. So that's an amazing starting point to connect with them and invest with them. And Rebecca, you already mentioned the Day of Caring activities, but I myself love participating in those. It's a very quick and accessible way to connect and learn more about our community and give something back.
Thanks, Jessica. Excellent answer. One of the, again, feel free to add a question to the chat room or the Q&A if you have one. One of the last questions I think I would have for this group, we said, what do you do if you're just trying to get started? And where do you start? And I think everyone here has offered a different way in which they started. And so we'd love to just spend a bit more time on that. I guess the thought I would have is every single one of these organizations, not-for-profit organizations in our community, needs help. They need help in some way. If you call them up and volunteer or ask how you can help them, they will have a list of things that they're incredibly grateful for if you could help them with. And so I think it starts with, reaching out, really. It starts with you reaching out. A really small example, and again, you can be a leader from any role you're in your own organization. One of our branches, every year around the holiday season as a group, there's about 10 of them, they support a food bank, and they get a hamper, and it basically says what that family needs, and they divide and conquer, and they create the most amazing holiday basket for this family that includes, honestly, things that you and I would take for granted: winter boots, just some really basic food, things like that. But because they're doing it together, it's a spirit of doing something amazing for the community, and it's a tradition. It's their tradition. So I would just say, start somewhere. Don't overthink it. The organizations will be incredibly appreciative of any help you can give. That would be my advice. Rob, any advice for the folks that are joining us?
Yeah, maybe two things. One is as we've mentioned before, I think it's great, get started somewhere, but keep your eye out for a cause that you really do believe in and does resonate. If you're doing it just to check a box at work, you're gonna hate it, and you're gonna burn out on it. So definitely find something that speaks to you. In terms of financial giving, something that I did, I was raised on Wealthy Barber, on pay yourself first, and that's what I did for my giving as well. I started small, and just every time I got a pay raise, I increased it. And I increased it and I increased it. And I never got used to the money, and I've never missed the money. And over time, it will grow, and you can suddenly look back and say, hey, wow, this is a donation that I'm proud of to give to the community. So I'd encourage people who are looking to get into the world to start with a similar path.
And I think we have time for one more question that just came in. Laura, maybe I'll ask you this one. You obviously work for a company where they are absolutely fully supportive of, you know, the causes that you're putting your names behind, but not every company has established programs like that. What's advice that you have for folks about approaching their own leadership, about creating a program to give back if they don't have one? How do you influence that change?
Yeah, and I think I've talked to a lot of local tech companies around this as well, and I'm always happy to chat offline as well. But I think, you know, starting really grassroots, start a little committee where, you know, your goal is to maybe run a few like fundraisers throughout the year, offer to plan those, plan some volunteering activities for people to do. Again, they don't even need to cut into work hours. There's a lot of evidence that shows that companies that have, like, their employees are looking for opportunities. I think there was a statistic between like 78% of Gen Z are working for a company that is has social impact programming. And that is a tremendous stat. And that shows that, like, you're probably not alone. So there's probably like-minded individuals within your organization that also want to find opportunities to give back. And maybe it just starts off as a really small group that just does something weekly or monthly or quarterly, whatever it may be, but volunteer to kind of take the lead on that and kind of grow. Because I think some of the feedback that we get from our employees about getting involved, it takes their involvement in work like to the next level, right? Like they care so much that they see the impact they're driving through small contributions of time. I've seen a few of the organizations we're working with for Give Back on this call as well. And it's great hearing our employees get excited about it, getting excited about the opportunities to do it. So I think leadership will soon see that. And there's so many good ways that you can to really pinpoint that with your leaders within your organization.
Excellent answer. That reminded me, we once did a Habitat for Humanity, and it was so much fun together. And I'm still mocked for my inability to put drywall up. Drywall is very hard, by the way. So yeah, it's a really important way to bond as a team as well. And hopefully most leaders see that. It's an amazing investment in your future, in your talent, in the team culture. But for those that don't, you may have to, you know, encourage them and find ways to drop those hints. This has been a wonderful conversation. I want to thank each and every one of you, Jessica, Rob, and Laura, for sharing your insights and your passion, and also volunteering or offering to get in touch with folks outside of this panel as well. I'm going to thank everyone that's joined us as well. I'm going to turn it over to Joan Fisk, who is our CEO for United Way Waterloo Region Communities, who's going to close out our session. Joan, over to you.
Can you see me? You can see me now. How about that? There I am. Technology. Here we go. Well, how can anybody not be inspired by the wonderful conversation that we experienced today? I was sitting here thinking, holy smokes, this is such an incredible conversation. I think some of the things I'd like to say thank you for are some of your comments. Rob, crave it and need it. When you think about philanthropy and what you said, that is an impactful conversation. And I think that that's how I started. And when I hear Laura talking about starting pretty early and her influence her family had on her to become a creative and a beautiful voice in our community, Laura, I haven't physically met you, but I have heard some amazing things about your passion. And Jessica, yes, I have met Miss Jessica, and she is a powerful voice for the future. And it bodes well for our future to listen to all of the generations speaking here today saying, man, you know, giving is not so hard if you put your mind and muscle to it. And muscle is part of it, not just money, as Rob said earlier in his conversation. The idea is that the pandemic has shown us that local need, local love creates a passion inside of us all that can't be quelled. It's a fire that never stops. It never goes out. And you never have enough time and you never have enough money. But what you do have is you have a little bit in your mind, in your body, in your heart to give a little bit. I've always been part of many volunteer situations, boards, volunteer activities. And I just say your insight today is rewarding for the people that got a chance to listen to you. It's a great way to kick off the concept of United Voices, because you are united in your voices. And when I think back to Vidyard and KPMG and University of Waterloo and what they allowed you to come and visit with us today too, I'm grateful. Rob, yesterday had a great visit with your new Steve, who's also a crazy but wonderful philanthropist.
Yes, he is.
Well led by an Eastern import, and we're thrilled to have him as part of our community. So you must tell him that you joined United Voices today with all the women. I think you were probably a few token men around here, and we're grateful to have you. But again, thank you. Our community is wiser and stronger because of what you give us. And Rebecca, a big thank you goes out to you and your leadership and leading our incredible cabinet. It doesn't really resonate to you so much if you're not there on the ground with her, but I am, and I am related to her by my elbow bumps, because that's all we can have these days. Again, thank you. I want to leave you with these words that realize your worth. And your worth is not just your money. It is what talent and treasure you give to your community, to your children, to your parents, to the livelihood of our community. And I'm grateful for that. So stay strong and stay connected. And I look forward to reaching out to you at any time. And I'm here for you to reach out to anytime you want. Cheers, everybody.